Annie and Grant. Here we go.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Most of you don't even know much about who I am or where I came from in the original times of my life, because I was actually born to a missionary lady in the 1960s. But, yeah, there was a lot of things there. And what happened to me in my childhood was that I got this inheritance from my ancestors who brought these evil spirits or demons or idols or something onto my life. And as a young child, I couldn't do anything about it at that time. And what I had to find out later on, sorry, sweetie, by the time I got through to maturity and so on and became an independent person, and I was sacked from the workforce, and even though I did a training as a teacher and that beforehand, they didn't want me to stay there because I was just mentally sick, and I was an epileptic lady for decades and decades and decades and decades, and I was stuck on these medications and that for many decades. They were just horrible. Yes, that's right. And I certainly was. I was a New South Wales country girl originally, but I did get encouraged by some believers who, back in the 80s and 90s there, they were watching these American evangelists and so on in those days, and they encouraged me to come up and start a course in the Gold Coast there in the Rhema Word of Faith Church and the Rhema Bible Training Centre. And that was a 2-year course that somebody else paid for it for me, not me, because I assure you I was on the dole at that time, and I was on the dole for 14 years. And the miracle that happened to me when I first moved up here to Redlands Bay, and I hadn't even been here before, so I didn't even know what church to go to myself. But I was picked up by one of my fellow students who knew me from Rhema Bible Training Centre, and they picked me up in Middle Street there in Cleveland one morning and took me down on that Sunday morning to their church. And that was just a miracle of God, for them to find me on the footpath in their car. And then they took me in their car. And I'll tell you what happened next after that. 3 months after I was starting to go to this local church here, I'm not talking about the Salvos so much, but the Rhema church here. And 3 months after that, this man and I were dating together from 2002 because we met each other right in the church. And it's good to have these born-again believers to become your companions for life. And they really are valuable things. And I tell you that I was still an epileptic at that time, and there were times when I did collapse in the church at times because I had no control of myself. And then by the time we got married, we did get permission from the government, and the government let me take that back, because it wasn't the government, it was Jesus Christ who took away from me any of these daylight hour seizures and things like that were going on before. They were 24/7 all the time. But they stopped in the church. And the Lord turned me to become a nocturnal epileptic after that. And I still have to admit that it was still going on for the last 16 years that Grant and I have been together, and he's the only one who sees them at night, or saw them at night, sorry. Yeah. And since that time, there was a great opportunity for me to become one who could work out the identifications that the Lord wanted me to identify inside myself and could speak to them straight out of my mouth, and I was commanding them to get out of myself. For the first few that were there, it took me a while because I was a very slow learner at that time, and it took me ages to learn that I had to not just command them to go once by name, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, but I had to tell them to get out and to never, ever, ever return again. Yes, so there were 4 spirits that I knew were in my heart, and there were about 6 emotions in my mind. Some of you may remember in 2016 when we had Dr. Carolyn Leaf giving us that course that we did, which was very good and very encouraging to us. So it taught me a lot of things to take notice of, and things like bad emotions like anger and fear and selfish ambitions and hatred and all these others. And I just had to get them all out of myself, and it was a slow process. And then, as you know, by about the time of 2018 or 19, that was that time when we were all held up a little bit by the COVID-19s. And they did hold us all back a bit, but gratefully we're out of that now. And what has happened, I got a license. I was given the permission by the government and the doctor. This was in 2010, with thanks to Grant. He gave me the right to become a driver's license in the daylight hours. I was not allowed to drive before, but I got the permission from God to do that. And I even got a vehicle from him. And in the last couple of years, there's been a whole lot of other things to go through in these identifications and so on, because there were not only things in the spirit, there were things in the head, there were also things in my nervous system and flesh, and there were a whole lot of curses as well. And we've had to speak them all out of ourselves. So just be watchful.
Yes, thanks very much. And this, like to say, Annie is cleared of all medication of Tegretol and Cyprexa, and
There was never a month before when I couldn't.
The doctors will only give a year, but we believe it's gone for good.
Yeah.
But we're just grateful for God for that. And
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, and do remember that course by Dr. Carolyn Lee.
Yes.
You can do it again another time.
Actually, Daphne has been mentioning we should run it again, so maybe that's the confirmation.